Hey, good morning, folks, and welcome to day two of DevDays Europe's 2021. The first thing I need to do is what every speaker needs to do, and that's sharing your screen, because that is nowadays the hardest part. Hopefully, next time we will do this in real life again, so it will be much easier. But bear with me, please. So let me just share my desktop and my screen one, and let's see what happens. This is my demo application I will talk to you about in a second. But first, let me go over this one. Again, welcome to DevDays day two. And the first thing I want to know from you, and you're probably already are awake and up and running. I am not so much. I'm trying to do that with my first coffee. But where are you from? I just want to know in the chat. Let me know where you are from and where you are watching this from. In the meantime, look at this slide and it explains to you a bit how the system works, how Pine works, how you can see all the live sessions and check the schedule. Feel free to ask questions in the chat. And well, questions, there's a Q&A button for that. But to chat in the chat, and again, there are already people, Lithuania, Poland, Lithuania. All right. People are awake. I love this. In the meantime, the organizers asked me to give a shout out to the sponsors, and you see them on the right-hand side of my screen already, and I will elaborate a little bit on them. I am not affiliate to any of the sponsors, so I'm not getting any money out of this, so you know, but they make these things like these conferences work and make sure that these things can actually go there. Hey, there's somebody from Belgium. Hey, folks, I'm from Holland. We're neighbors. Good to have you here. But first of all, one of the gold sponsors, or the gold sponsors, Allegro, which is a Polish shopping platform, and they're one of the largest e-commerce websites in Europe. Approximately 20 million customers visit this platform, and that's about the equivalent of 80% of all internet users in Poland. That means that if people search for something, they probably go to Allegro instead of to any other search engine. Well, the silver sponsor is Neoflex, and Neoflex creates IT platforms for digital business transformations, and they help their customers gain sustainable competitive advantage in the digital era. They focus on customer software development and implementation of complex information systems using cutting-edge technologies. All right, and then we have three bronze sponsors, Voltus IT, Telesoftus, and Metasites. And let me start with the last one, Metasites. They do bespoke digital financial platforms and application design, engineering, integration, and support for financial industry leaders and rising fintechs all across Europe. They are technology professionals who believe in the power of a dynamic, flat hierarchy culture, constantly exploring the latest IT trends and tools. And of course, they enjoy working in an autonomous team. Who doesn't nowadays? Telesoftes, a consulting company, and they do product engineering, and they're a product engineering company. What they say with a unique company culture. They help the businesses build full products from start to finish, and that includes UX, design, front end, back end, enterprise mobile, web application development. So they do basically everything. And then we get Voltus IT. It's a fast-growing, innovative technology company on a mission to create a vehicle assistance for daily drivers. They strive to become the global leader in intelligent automotive diagnostics. Engineers and programmers together develop a professional diagnostic tool called OBD11, and they help daily drivers easily understand and customize their vehicles via mobile applications. So that is the commercial part. Again, I'm not affiliated with one of these sponsors whatsoever, but they need to be called out or else things like this would not be possible. I would encourage you, good morning to you all again, for those who stepped in a little bit later, to put questions in the Q&A box during my session, and I will do the questions afterwards. Chat around in the chat box, which is all cool. Again, if you didn't put it in, let me know where you're from. I am from the Netherlands. I'm based, an hour south from Amsterdam. And for those who are familiar with the Netherlands, I'm currently based in Breda, which is actually close to the Belgian border. Anyhow, you see on this slide how you can use the Pine platform, how you can see all the sessions, the schedules. You can go to all the speakers, the attendees, and meet the companies and partners. So far, so good. And let's start with the real thing, right? because you're not here to talk about sponsors. I'm going to do a keynote session, which is my first full keynote. I did a shared keynote once, so I'm a little bit nervous, so bear with me, please. This always happens. So this talk is called Stranger Danger, Finding Security Vulnerabilities Before They Find You. You see my Twitter handle in the back or in the bottom line. And if you have any questions afterwards, feel free to ping me on Twitter or to ping me anyway on Twitter. I'm good with that, everything. But I have to ask you something first. We have to talk about this word called DevSecOps. And I need to know from you all, like, who likes that word DevSecOps? I mean, really? Let me just go publish a poll. I'm publishing a poll right now, and I want to know, like, do you like the word DevSecOps? Just give it a second, and let me show you what is going on. I've got one vote in. So please vote on that. Do you like the word? And I will elaborate a little bit on that, because the first time I saw this word, I was like, this looks like a new buzzword. Let's put AI in and blockchain, and we have a full buzzword bingo. And I see that at this point, there are a lot of people that do not so much like the word DevSecOps, and I get that. But there's a meaning to that. I didn't like it, but if you'll know the meaning, it is okay. But let me get you to the second question. So let me publish a second poll, and the second poll is, do you practice DevOps? And you can go to the poll sides in the right-hand side. Do you think you practice DevOps? Because DevSecOps derives from the word DevOps. Who does DevOps? And I mean, with DevOps, we try to tear down walls between developers and operations and connect them together to be better, faster, and stronger. We try to tear down that wall, because before that, we had this stuff that we created something and we threw it over the wall towards the operation side. Now with DevOps, we try to bend that together. And if you don't believe you're doing DevOps, and I will unpublish this poll for a second. Oh, yes. And I published second poll. Do you practice DevOps? My story, all these technologies, but DevOps. We try to tear down walls between developers and operation. But if we look nowadays in what that means, is that some people don't believe they do DevOps. But think about it. If you create the stuff and in the end, your team is responsible for throwing it into production, and say at 3 a.m, you will get called if something goes wrong, then you practice DevOps to some extent. Or at least if you need to fix the stuff that is wrong, what's in production, then you actually believe and maintain and own what you create. And that is the essence of DevOps. Tearing down the wall between developer and operations. But then there is security. And in many cases, security is not so much a thing within DevOps, although I believe it should. Just like scalability, maintainability, readability, modularity, all these things that are implicit for developers, security should be one as well. But not only on the dev side, also on the ops side. So that's why DevSecOps is there with the security in the middle to make sure that security is central. Security is first, but security should be a first-class citizen and a first thing in a developer's and operations person's mind. Okay, who am I? That's always an important one. Not so much, but this is me. My name is Brian. I am a Java champion. I do some stuff in the community space. Like I'm one of the leaders for the virtual jug and the NL jug, and fancy. Like there, I co-lead the DevSecOn and do a bunch of stuff more. I am a developer advocate and engineer for Snyk, and Snyk is a company that focuses on developer tooling for developers to create more secure software. We are not so much a security company. Well, we do security research, but the focus for us is creating developer tooling that helps you secure. Anyway, we're trying to solve a problem with that DevSecOps thing, right? Or else, why is it there? Well, I will get you on a journey, my own journey. Like 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago, I worked for a government agency. And what we did, we released our software like 3 times a year. And that's easy. Like we build stuff and we build stuff. And then at a certain point in time, there was a specific release, a sprint, as we call it. And we focused there to release all the features that we gathered over the last couple of months. But if you fast forward to nowadays, we try to speed up this delivery. And we might even go like 3 times a day instead of 3 times a year. The point is, can you imagine that? I had it myself, that program manager or product manager is breathing down your neck because we want to get that feature out faster and earlier than our competitor. That means every now and then, because we are so feature focused, we take shortcuts. And the problem is there is a lack of security focus during the development lifecycle, or basically during the whole lifecycle of application development. Because if we focus so much on features, and that is the only KPI we were getting at, we're taking shortcuts. And not only that means that we have technical debt, but also means implicitly that bugs can turn into security issues. And in many cases, as we already have dev and ops together, security is much more a siloed thing at the end for many companies. This means that I work 3 weeks on a sprint, and that is amazing. And then I have this piece of software that I'm very proud of. And then there's the security dude that says to me, no, because he found that something is leaking. And I'm like, but that program manager is still breathing down my neck. However, it means that we have friction between the security company that is siloed and the development and operations side that is together. But in the end, the point is we need to play along. It's just like children. I mean, we have to be sure that security is something that we care of, because we do not want our customer data to get compromised. We do not want to be that next big headline in the newspaper. Well, fair enough, but how bad is that situation? Well, I'm going into a company. I'm going to tell you a story again, and it's about this company and these headlines. In 2017, there was a company in America, in the United States, called Equifax. And that company built their stuff. I'm not going into the company so much because they were basically a victim as well. They built their stuff on top of a outdated version of Apache Struts. And Apache Struts is pretty much a Java framework that lays the foundational layer for your application. Well, fast forward, what was the problem? In that specific Apache Struts 2 version, there was a security issue found. It was disclosed, and there was already a new version out. However, they did not know. They were focusing on new features, on new things, on getting new stuff out, and everything was already there in production. But if you don't look at it and it's vulnerable, people can get in, snoop around for days, weeks, maybe even months. And in the end, over 143 million US customers were compromised and their personal data was out on the streets. And that is something you don't want for your company you work with or for your personal information, right? You trust the companies to some extent that you work with. So think about it. You can say like, hey, 20 years ago, nobody knew about Equifax outside of the United States. And since 2017, everybody knows of it. So that's good marketing. I beg the difference. You don't want to be this new headline. However, let me get right into that hack. I think that is the interesting part. So I've got an application over here. And this application runs on Heroku. Now, let me just start it up because every time you do something with Heroku and you're down for 20 minutes, and of course, I tried this out like a few minutes before this presentation, it spins up a new bot. So it's spinning up. But this application is not so much interesting. It's using that Apache Struts 2 layer, the same version as Equifax had. But let's get into the hacking part. Because this is the actual hack. And you're like, what the heck? Well, let me get into this. What we are going to do is we can do a curl request. And I'm using the command line because it's way easier to do raw curl requests from here instead of doing something in a browser or well, say a Postman or whatever. So let me just clear the screen for a second. And you see this header. I can just call a request with this specific header, and this header is a content type. Do you already recognize that content type? Probably not. I mean, Yes, it's a header with a key and a value, and this is the actual content type. But as you can see, this content type doesn't really exist. It's not a real content type. It's a faulty content type. It's a wrong, invalid content type. What happens in this version of Apache Struts is if you have an invalid content type, you go into an exceptional flow. And with that exceptional flow, you are allowed to utilize OGNL, the Object Graph Navigational Language. And the Object Graph Navigational Language is an expression language, which is there in Apache Struts. And with an expression language like this, you can interfere with the with the objects that are there. So I can call a getter or a setter or a function that is there defined on an object. But what I can do more, I can create new objects. And that's what's happening here. Because what I'm doing here is I'm creating a new process builder. And a process builder spins up a new process, basically a second runtime. Let's call it like that. And we feed this process builder, so basically another thread, we feed this the bash. And that bash, we feed it an arbitrary command. So if we get these things together, I can spin up a bash because I do some weird curl request, and I can call any command that is there because I run it a bash script. Interesting. Let's just do this, just to make a little bit of fun. So what I'm doing here is I'm using this one. What I'm doing here is I'm using that header I just showed you, and I am substituting the word command for the word env. And env is a command in Linux just to show you the environment variables. And this is just to make a statement. I'm not hurting something. It's, well, it says localhost over here, but let's not do that. Let's go to this Heroku application just to make it a little bit fun, just to spice it a little bit up, right? But if I do it like this, I'm just running this on Heroku -h. So let's do this. And what you see, what happens is if I fire off this curl request, because it's using this Apache Struts 2 layer, this is getting accepted, and I'm rerouting the output to an input stream, so I can see over here what my environment variable for this Heroku application is, specifically for this pod. And what I can see is what the Java options are. So I know it's Java. Well, hell yeah, it's Struts, so it was Java. I can see what the Java home is, and I can see a bunch of other things. But can you imagine if I can call the env command? I can basically call any command that is there available on that Linux system. I can create files. I can stuff these files with script logic. I can call the script the other day, and good luck finding out what happens, even if you have proper logging. You get me? This is something that is there in the bottom layer of your application because you forgot to update to the newer version. We need this one. This Java home, we need it for a later hack. So bear with me. We can see where the actual JDK is located, or JVM is located on this Heroku application, and I will need it for a later hack. But let's get back to the presentation. So thinking about this, say this is your full application. This is the application that you build. This is the binary that you put into production. How much of this binary is actually the code you wrote? It's probably something like this. I mean, we take good pride in that code. We review that code. We probably have things in place like code review, maybe some automatic QA stuff, or you do pair programming to make sure that at least multiple people saw the code before it goes into your master branch or goes into production. Fair point. But how about the rest? Because most of the code that goes into the binary that you put into production is not yours. These are your frameworks and libraries that you depend on. And as you know, if you have a framework or a library, that depends on another library and depends on another library, and it goes several layers deep. And you pull this stuff into your application, and it's part of the binary that you just release to production. And you're not only responsible for that tiny piece of code you wrote. And again, I believe we are good software developers, so we do a lot of good stuff. But how did you manage all the other things? Did you take care of that? How did you pick your binary? How do you know about the health of your binary? And moreover, how do you know that a binary is not containing any security vulnerabilities? Well, just give you a little bit of fun. We created a Small serverless application with Node.js, and it had 19 lines of code. This 19 line of code application had 2 direct dependencies. And I already told you that a direct dependency, pulls in more other dependencies. So what we can see is that 2 direct dependencies using NPM, that's not that bad. There's only 19 dependencies. But again, 19 dependencies. We wrote 19 lines of code. But now, just to give you a number, how many lines of code do you think I did put into production? I will give you one second to think about that. You can call it out in the chat. If not, it's not a worry. I will give you the answer anyway. It gives me time to get me a sip of water. Well, 2 dependencies, or 19 dependencies in total, and 19 lines of code ends me with almost 200,000 lines of code. And then we can say, yeah, not all this code is reachable, but are you sure? That is the first question I want to ask you. And do you know which I now see the numbers coming up, but do you think that all that code that is not reachable is actually not reachable? Or maybe if it's put in, you give it already away to the next developer, like, hey, it's there, we can use it. But let's go into a Java application. This Java application is 222 lines of code. And of course, this is a snippet because I couldn't put 222 lines of code of a Spring Serverless application in my screen. However, it was bad, trust me. I wrote it together with one of my colleagues, and it was for a demo application with a lot of duplication. But it had 5 direct dependencies. And if you look at it, you already see some stuff from the Spring Framework and some stuff from Amazon AWS. 5 direct dependencies, in this case using Maven, brought me like 54 dependencies because, well, we basically download the world. $1 million question. How many lines of code of Java serverless code do I actually put into production? Just shy of 500,000 lines of code. And again, we are not only responsible for the 222 lines we wrote. That's less than 1% in this case. But we're responsible for the whole binary. So we need to take care of that. So again, open source usage has exploded, and for a good reason. I mean, you do not want to create yet another CRUD repository or yet another REST endpoint. However, we need to take care of open source as well. Don't get me wrong, but open source is not insecure nor secure. You get me? It's in between, just like your code, like my code. There are mistakes in that code. And what the beauty of it is that there are a lot of people working on it, so it's updating a lot of times. So a new version comes out, but we have to take care of that. So we have to take care of these things just as much as we take pride of our own code. Because if there is a problem in a open source package, and that package is widely used, there is a potential victim pool of millions. And that is what happened to Equifax. They were there in the middle of the crossfire because people found out and just started shooting across endpoints on the internet and found out that some of these applications were using that outdated Apache Struts version. However, they were not specifically targeted. So just make sure you care about this. And new packages come there every day. Every year, new packages come on top of the existing packages, and we see that NPM is the clear winner here. During 2019, they crossed that million package line, which is amazing, but it also means there is a lot to choose from, and a lot of these packages are not healthy or not doing what you want or are having security issues. And if we look at the vulnerabilities identified since 2014 for every ecosystem, we see that luckily between 2018 and 2019, the line is lowering, but it's on top of what's happening earlier. Still, over 400 new vulnerabilities were found in Maven Central packages, on top of what is already. So that means we need to take care of this. We need to look at these things. And again, I already told you that if we look at NPM and Maven Central, for instance, because these are the 2 biggest ecosystems currently, we see that most of the problems are not in the dependency that you actually put into your manifest file. That means your POM or Gradle file or your package.json, but it's in the transitive dependencies that your dependency depends on. So do you actually have any clue what you're pulling in? And most of the time, it's not exactly what you're pulling in, but what's the dependence on that goes wrong. We asked the open source maintainers how confident are they about their own security, and 63% says, kind of. But how much do you trust kind of? Well, literally, we just agreed that we have code reviews. So basically, you do not trust your peers to get stuff into production right away, but we do trust somebody outside of the company or our own team to blindly import their packages. If that's not the case, good job. If that is the case, think about it. And this is the $1 million thing, I guess. Who is responsible for security? Because that's always a debate. But we agreed that we do DevOps, so we are responsible for everything. That includes security. And it is a shared responsibility between developers, security teams, and operations people. But if we look at software, and that means application security, the other thing is infrastructure like Kubernetes and Terraform. A lot of people believe that at least for the application part, 85% thinks that developers need to take their fair share. And that's for a good reason. I mean, I create the software. I, as a developer, make a choice what to use, how to use it, and which package I want to import. I made code constructions deliberately to solve a problem. So I am the one who should be responsible, at least to some extent, to make sure that I make a conscious decision. Not only that it's fast and that I can scale, but also that it's secure. This house I'm currently standing on, I hope that the people that build it use the right materials, for instance. I trust them. And that piece of trust should be there in software development as well. So developers need to take their fair share. That's the main point. Interesting fact, if you publish a piece of software or a package, it probably is free of vulnerabilities. Let's assume that. But over time, something will get created or get found. How much time does it take in general for a undisclosed problem, undisclosed security vulnerability to be found and disclosed? The median in this case is about 2.5 years. So if you're working with, say, outdated legacy software that's there in production, you don't dare to touch it anymore, but it is customer facing, maybe it's worth looking at it to see if there are any problems, because, hey, over time, things will get found, disclosed, and probably newer versions are already out. That means you probably need to update, and it gives you a lot of pain the longer you wait for it, but it's worth trying. Then we get into Docker, because that's the next stage. I mean, we love Docker containers, but there is this misconception that if you have an application and you put it in a Docker container, it is just sealed off the world and there's no security vulnerabilities anymore there. Some people do believe this. However, if you look at how to build a Docker file, the first line of a Docker file is from something, like from Ubuntu or from Debian or from Node. That means the Node latest image. Well, we took this was somewhere to late 2019. I did a research on Docker containers, and I downloaded the 10 free most used Docker containers from Docker Hub and scanned them for vulnerabilities. And this was the result. All of these 10 had vulnerabilities. Period. Point is that some had more than others. And I just downloaded, at that point in time, I downloaded the latest. So no specific version, no specific hash. And if you look at Node with the 500 something vulnerabilities, these vulnerabilities were not so much the default of Node, because the Node image, the Node latest image, is built on top of a Debian image. At that point in time, I think it was Debian Jessie, which is already outdated, of course. But the majority of these vulnerabilities, and maybe even all of them, could be relocated to the operating system. Because I'm downloading basically an image that is based on a full-blown operating system. And do I actually need that? Does my tiny, small microservice REST endpoint needs a full operating system? Probably not. But I bring all these binaries that might be influenced or might have a security vulnerability. And then people say, yeah, but they are not directly targeted. Yeah, that is true. But if you look at security problems and security attacks, it's always a chain of attacks. So we just need one endpoint and we connect some dots together. And at the end, we get an execution. So normally it's not a direct execution. It is via. Anyway, Docker, again, is another layer of things that we need to, as developers or as DevOps team, need to take care of. I will skip to the last few things because we asked people again, like, how do you find out about open or operating system vulnerabilities? And half of them don't. And some people don't even find out if they deploy the container, like they just leave it there and they don't ever find out if there is a problem in these operating system or in these container layers. But let's get to the hacking part because that's what I promised you. All right. You already saw this application, but I'm going into this one. This is and I will enlarge it for you so you can actually see it. This is, hide, please. Yes. Let me give it a full. This is a node application to build a to-do list. I can say something like buy flowers, and well, I can build to-dos. Nothing special really. And at the end over here, we see an about button. If I go into that about button, you see that this is the best about page ever. You see, I'm a great UX designer because I read the UX book like years ago, and what they say is you need to have good contrast between the background and the foreground. That is already there, and it should be scalable. So hey, it works on mobile. You see, cool, right? No, but the point I want to make over here is it's a static page. I'm serving the static page to you with an npm package called st. And there's a problem in that st package, a so-called path traversal problem. And I will show you what the problem is. And that is because I just imported an outdated version. So let me just get that page. I think what 3000. What was the port? 3001 /public /about.html. And of course, as a good hacker citizen, I will not use the browser. No, I will use my terminal because, hey, that's what they do in the movies, right? But as you can see, if I curl the request, I will get the HTML page. So let's go into that path traversal problem. Instead of going to the about page, I am doing something like this: .. And what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to break out of, first of all, the public folder, which you normally don't want me to break out. Then I try to break out of the web server, and I try to go into the actual machine. And if I do .. and .. I do it several times, I will end up in the root. And if I'm in the root and I do a .. I will stay in the root. So that's cool. Let's try this. Let's try if a classic path traversal works. Unfortunately not. It will redirect me back to my homepage because here you see the link to the about page, right? That means the st library is a real library, and that real library sees that I'm doing specifically a .. and it blocks specifically the .. And there is the nuance in that. It specifically blocks .. So let's be a little bit smarter. What we can do is do something like, instead of .. try to escape it or something like this. But trust me, that doesn't work. Just saving some time here. What I can do is use URL encoding. And this is a fun question for the next interview you're doing for your new team member. Ask what the URL encoding is for a dot. It is %2e. And if I do %2e one more time, I have basically a .. So by doing this, I can redo this. As you can see, I end up in the root of my local system. But if I can end up in the root of my local system, I can go to etc/passwd. Luckily, nowadays, there's nothing really important in the passwd file, but I can read this file because I'm just using that st package. And that is interesting because now I have read access to a lot of files. And then people say, yeah, Brian, that's cool, but you can only read. How important is that? Somebody asked me to zoom in. I will. Thank you, Stefan, for pointing this out. I hope this is better. Anyway, I can have read access because I can do this. Point is, read access might not be very high severity, but it's the start of my journey. What I can do with read access is I can just try to snoop around. I can try things like, hey, instead of going to the passwd file, let's Let's now break out of the public folder. What I can see here is that it's actually a Node.js application. So what I can do here, let's go to the package.json. And if this is not already an open source project, this is something that's interesting to me, because now I can see what kind of dependencies you're using. And I'm seeing here that you're using the ST library, you're using the MS library, and this one is vulnerable. I can just look it up on the internet. Marked is vulnerable. Express is vulnerable. So I just have more information. I can get more information to start my next step in my attack. Even more importantly, we know that Node.js is an interpreted language. So what we can do is we can actually go into the actual programming code. So I opened the app.js, and unfortunately somebody forgot to blank out a secret over here. But think about it. Even if it's not like right there in your face, maybe you have a properties file over there that contains a token or at least some information to connect to a database. These kind of things are important because I can use that information together with other information to craft a new attack. So this is already an interesting one. I just talked to you that we saw the package.json and we saw the MS library. Well, let's get into that one because that has a problem as well. I'm not making this up. First of all, just shout it out in the chat. Who of you likes regular expressions? And before you say yes or no, who of you also likes to debug and read other people's regular expression? Well, as I trust a lot of you don't, at least the reading part and the debugging part, because regular expressions are some things that I believe is a write-only thing. But let's get into a regular expression. Say this is my regular expression. And I would this is a weird one. This is a weird one. Say this is the regular expression, and I'm trying to connect this regular expression to this string. And of course this works, right? This works. But how does it work? Do you actually know? Does it use the A until halfway and then the plus until halfway and then the start, or the other way around? Honestly, I don't care. I really, really, really don't care, as long as it works. But what we know from a direct expression is if it doesn't work, it goes into a backtracking mode, if I can say it like that, and it tries every single expression that is valid for that expression I gave you and tries to match that to the string. So it tries every single possibility. Then think about the following thing. On how many threads does a Node application work? Only one. So if I can make a regular expression that is big, and I make sure that it goes all the way into backtracking mode and tries every single possibility, I just occupy that thread. And you cannot serve a page anymore. So I have a regular expression denial of service. Let's try that one. So let's just do something just to show you how this works. I will put in this statement. I'm using HTTPI to fill in the form on my local host using my terminal. And I'm filling in call mom in 20 minutes. If I do this, it will come back and the actual thing is here, call mom in 20M. So it means it does something with the 20 and the literal word minutes. So the literal number and the literal string. Cool. So let's do another one. Say instead of doing the calling mom, I'm now buying milk. And instead of buying milk in a number, well, I just plot 60,000 fives and try to match that to minutes. And again, I will drop this line to my local host 3001 and see what happens. It comes back, and quite fast. Only it took already a little bit longer because it needs to do some computation probably. But what we see in the result is that it says buy milk in infinity days. This is what my to-do list looks like, and I'm always on time because Infinity Days gives me a lot of time. Anyhow, it matches, so it comes back. The only thing what we need to do to get in full backtracking mode is just make sure that it does not match. So instead of typing minutes, and I already told you I'm from the Netherlands, and I have a lot of English colleagues in the United States and the UK, and I mistype things. I'm sorry. So now I just mistype minutes with minutes. If I'm doing this, you see that it hangs. It doesn't come back. If I go back to my application and I do something like this and I just bash my enter button, you'll see that it hangs because it tries to do every single pattern to see if it works or not. The problem is I did 60,000 fives. So at a certain amount of time, it works. It has all the, it evaluates all the different expressions and it comes back like it does now. If I add another minute, or add another 0 to it, we will be waiting here for the rest of the week. The point is, this is a package that you're having and you didn't know about this. But the point is, if I do this and you work on old-fashioned bare metal, then I just do this once or twice or 3 times, depending on how many servers you have. And you're out of service. There's a denial of service. Think about it. If this is an e-commerce platform and it's Black Friday, and I am sure that your e-commerce platform, because you are my competitor, uses this package. I'm just doing this once or twice or 3 times. Nobody can get it here anymore, and they come to me. But even worse, nowadays, we're in the cloud era. If I work in the cloud, it's not so much a denial of service, because what happens if you are working in the cloud with elastic scaling, another one pops up if a pod is not, or an instance is not available, and another one pops up, and another one pops up. So I script this and do this over and over again. And instead of a denial of service, I just drain your funds. So it's denial of pocket money. Anyhow, just because you're using the wrong version. All right. I already showed you that Java application. And that Java application with the struts problem has more problems because we created it this way. So let me sign up to this application. And let me sign up with my name and my email address and give it a password 123456 because I work at a security company and this is totally safe. Don't do this at home. So I sign up and I am here. No, don't put this in my password folder. What I can do over here, I can create to-dos again because, hey, we didn't have anything else to do. What I can do here, I can do something funny as eat pie using a pie sign. Give it a due date in 1970, and well, by now I'm hungry, so give it a high priority. If I create this, we'll see that it's there in my to-do list, and the pie sign is transformed into the ASCII representation of the pie sign. This means that the title goes through the native to ASCII function, which is part of the JDK. I just call that function. That means that every symbol is translated into an ASCII representation. Okay, keep that one in mind. What we can do as well is we can upload files, and we can upload zip files. I'm using a zip library to unzip a file and to get the unzipped files in my folder over here. Getting that together, I already showed you in the previous problem that, and I will enlarge this one as well for you, that we did that struts problem and we found out that this is the Java home. We can do something with native to ASCII, and I called you something with zip files. Okay, but what if my zip file looks like this? See the problem here? It has 2 files in this zip file. One file is the good.txt, which is just a normal file, and the second file is called .. And we already saw this earlier. This is a path reversal. /app/.jdk, which is the JDK of my Heroku instance, /bin/native to ASCII, which is the native to ASCII function. So what I'm trying to achieve is I am unzipping this file and trying to override the native to ASCII function that is there on my Heroku instance, part of my JDK. And that is because, well, in Java, there is no such thing as an unzip function. You can read zip entries and you can see what the zip entry is. But to do an unzip, you have to recreate that yourself. This means we can see a zip entry. We have to create a file in a certain place. We have to put the byte stream in, etc. If you do that all yourself, it's a lot of bulky code. So what we do is we create a library, or we use libraries for that. And there are several libraries that do this. And of course, I'm using an outdated one. So let me see. Let's just see what happens. So let's go into not the Java code workshop. Let's go to goof. Yes, the zip slip.zip. You probably don't see it, but doesn't matter. I'm just inserting the zip file I showed you. And what I see is that in the public folder where I expect my files to be, that the good.txt is there. So I know that it unzipped. So what did it do to the other file? Maybe nothing. Maybe it worked. Let's try. Put something in. Doesn't matter what the due date is or what the priority is. Up high, of course. It's DevDays. But you see that now every label will be translated into muhaha gotcha, because I overwrote the native to ASCII file in this Heroku system with a simple file called echo quotes muhaha gotcha. And any other thing I create over here, doesn't matter what I do, will be ending up in muhaha gotcha, because I'm using an outdated zip library that doesn't really look into the canonical path. So it basically just grabs the path, and it's quite simple to create such a zip file. You cannot just do it, but I can show you some Java code that does it. But if that zip file is there and this is the actual name, it just takes the name, takes the path, concatenates the two, and creates the file over there with the byte stream of the original zip entry. So we overwrite this. But of course, this was found and fixed, and already there's a new version out, and I only had to upgrade from 1.12 to 1.13. But I should have known. But I was more busy working on new features. You get what I'm saying? These things are there because we're using libraries to do the heavy lifting for us, and that's for a good reason. But we should be aware of these libraries. Last hack I'm going to show you. It's a Java application. It is a Spring Boot application. And yes, I will enlarge this. So let me go into the Spring application over here. And what I'm doing here is I'm creating a grocery list. And I'm creating a grocery list like beans for 50 cents and milk for $1.09 and bread for $1.50. Nothing really special. Also, my domain is also not so really special. It's just an item with an ID, a name, and a cost, and some getters and setters to get the private fields. Well, the interesting part is in the repository, because I am using Spring Data and Spring Data REST. With Spring Data, I just have to extend the CRUD repository, so I have CRUD functionality. And by naming design, I can do something like a find by name and just give it a string like this. It's just an interface. I don't have to implement the actual code. Spring Data does this for me, which is convenient because now I have CRUD things. I can just insert and delete stuff. Cool. So I can do a find by name and a find all. This is all I need. Right? The rest will be generated for me. Then we have Spring Data REST. And with Spring Data REST that I included over here, I can insert this annotation. And with this annotation, I from my CRUD repository, because nobody wants to do simple CRUD, right? This is just boilerplate. I changed that CRUD repository into REST endpoints right away, just without any harm. And that's cool, because now I can program against it. Let's run this one. This is very, very good for prototyping. It's very powerful, and I love this. The only point is well, you guessed it, there is an issue with this. So let's just see if the demo gods are with me. Yes, the demo gods are with me. Thank you, demo gods. So let's go to localhost 8080, and this will redirect me to a hell browser. And the hell browser is just to show you what we can do with certain endpoints. I can say /item/1, and that will give me beans, which was the first item on my grocery list. Of course, 2 will give me milk, etc., etc. What I can do as well is I can do, you see, find by name, and name is beer. Super cool. So now I can get the beer for $5.99. this is all I needed. This is all I tested. And this is how it should work. And I tested the happy and the unhappy path in my test scenarios. However, we need this one. Oh, now something goes wrong. There we are. What I can do, I can call a curl patch request. And a patch request, I can give it a body. In this case, a JSON body. And this is the JSON body I want to give it to. And it is somewhat similar to the old-fashioned classic struts hack, because everybody says to me, like, nobody uses struts anymore. We're using Spring Boot in Java. There you got it. This is an old version of Spring Boot, of course. But what we do here is with this body, I can utilize SPEL, the Spring expression language. And you already got my story. So that means that I can call stuff that is already there, or I can create new stuff. So what I'm doing here is I am getting the runtime, get the runtime, and I execute an arbitrary command. Somewhat the same as we did with the Apache Struts problem, but only in a newer, more popular, fancy library. So let me see where let's go into the passwd file. Spring exploit passwd file. So what I'm doing here is, and this is the interesting part, it is there implicitly. So I do a curl patch request. Curl patch request with a content type JSON patch. I give it the JSON as body, as I showed you. And instead of command, I now go to the /etc passwd file. But I locate it on localhost 8080 items/1, which is there when I assumed was there just as a GET request to get my first item in my grocery list. But it's not, because if I fire this off, you see that I have the entrance or the content of my passwd file. And again, I can start that series all over again. If I can do this, I can make files, I can create files, I can delete directories, because I'm just using Spring Data REST in this case, an outdated version. So a lot of these hacks are not specifically to your business logic, but are more or less to the libraries and frameworks that you include. So how can we solve this? Well, we can solve this in 3 ways: culture, process, and tooling. First of all, let's talk about culture. I'm saying team culture, but you can say team culture or company culture. It means we have to think alike. Developers normally think about creating stuff, getting new stuff out, using new frameworks, building stuff. Let's keep it to that. Security people, the old-fashioned security people, just think about not getting breached. So if you're not deploying, you cannot get breached. Operations people generally think about, can I deploy this right? Does it scale? What happens if they call me at 3 a.m. in the morning? And management, they care about deliverables and money. But that means if we only care about our own KPIs, then we're not so much playing along. If management doesn't give you as a developer the time to investigate stuff, to get rid of your, say, your technical debt, or to get to know about certain security issues, then you're just continuing on what you're doing because you have pressure. The same as we develop. If we just develop about, hey, if it works, ship it, yeah, that's cool. But if we also think about the scalability and maintainability, which we already do, but now also think about what security folks want, it doesn't give me 3 weeks to get that feedback from the security team. I might get it right away, or I might be already covering for that and not getting blocked at the end. So we need to play along. That is one thing. We need to think about the same things. Then there is process. Don't do new process. If you say, hey, you need to do all these tests before you go into production, somebody will do it if you just got breached and management is really up your sleeve and up your bottom and needs focus on that. But you probably, after a few weeks, you're back to normal. What if you look at the current process you work with and see if you can incorporate the tooling that you like and you want that helps your process instead of blocks your process? And that means automation, but also give you valuable insights. And then you come to the tooling. Tooling is not there to be satisfied at the end of the line in your pipeline, and if all tests are green, it's good. No, we should use the tooling to a certain extent to help us. And I will show you how to do that, and that it works within your process. So what we say is that we need to DevSecOps your pipeline, and that means your software development lifecycle from front to back, and start at your local machine by, if I create an application, why not scan it already there? Like if I'm going to this, what is this? This Spring application. And let me just make it a little bit smaller. Cool. And I say, for instance, I have the Sneak CLI over here. I'm using my tools because that's the one that's installed. It's free. You can use it as well. Oh, don't go to the exploit folder, but go to the root of the system, just to show you that tooling is available. And if you scan your stuff, you see that we already can catch vulnerabilities from the get-go instead of at the end. In this case, it looks at my dependency tree and it sees if there are any problems in the vulnerabilities I import. And you see there are. But what is interesting is it's zoomed in, so the layout is not really cool. But what we can see over here is that it says, hey, update 115 build snapshot. You shouldn't use a build snapshot. But update it to 159 release to fix a bunch of vulnerabilities. And that is helpful. So what I mean to say is here, don't just go for tools that say something is wrong, but also that provides you a possible fix or at least some insights how to fix it. And I can do this from my local machine or like in my terminal or with an implementation in my favorite IDE. Then let's go to the rest of it, like your repository. Connect your repository to a scanning tool that scans, for instance, on a daily basis. So every pull request or every new branch that comes together gets scanned, so you will not get worse, which is also a thing. Maybe you're comfortable with a certain level of vulnerabilities because they're not applicable to your situation. Again, it is about your situation. But you need to scan over and over again. Just scanning once doesn't help. Then you have your CI pipeline. And then you can, of course, we need something there. We need something there to scan your application, to scan your Docker file, maybe even your infrastructure as code, your Terraforms or whatever, and make sure that it's okay before you go to production. Once you're in production, you're not done. One thing you can do is you can monitor it. For instance, I did a sneak test with a tool I use. I can do a sneak monitor, and sneak monitor just takes a snapshot out of this and brings it to in this case, our UI or our system, and scans it on a daily basis. That means that as long as it's in production, it is all automated. It will scan on a daily basis if new stuff comes up, if new vulnerabilities are found, or if new fixes are found, and you can actively ping. Like, hey, I can connect it to my Jira board or to email or Slack or whatever you want. But these kind of tools are good for me because now I don't have to look into things manually. Once it's in production, I know that there is a snapshot that's been scanned on a daily basis and it will ping me and I can prioritize. So what we mean to say is we need to shift security left. That is the basic answer. Shift security left to the first stage here, which is on your local machine. But it's not just left. It's a continuous process. So you need just to scan in every single stage of your life cycle, and not only your dependency, but also your code and also your Docker containers. Just do that. Pick the right tooling to do so and help you out to be more secure. Go to our blog if you want to know more security insights on actual coding, like we have NPM and Java cheat sheets and Python cheat sheets, how to do secure coding. But that's about it. If there are any questions, I just go into the Q&A over here to see if there are any questions already. A question from Marcin. Are there any application services you would recommend to automate, detect all those vulnerabilities within CI/CD? Yes, my tool. Now, yeah, we can do that. We can do Sneak open source can do that. Sneak code does code reviews, but Sneak open source can do that for you. But there's always also stuff from the OWASP Foundation that you can use. It's. I don't want to get into a product pitch, but it's how important is your stuff. There are many tools, and the tools I showed you today, you can use that for free. What is the performance impact of running Sneak Monitor in production? Sorry, Marcin, I totally get you. The point is only you don't run it in production. You run it before you go into production. So when you're in production, actually your code is static and the amount of dependencies is static. So at that point, you take a snapshot just before you go get that jar, that var, or that npm package or that npm file into production. But you have that snapshot. The only thing that we have, if we look at the open source part, is the dependency tree that we need to scan over and over again. So there is no real performance impact. The performance impact is only there in your pipeline. So once it's there, your deployable is static, but also your dependency tree is static, and that is what is scanned on a daily basis. I hope that answers your question. If you have more questions, feel free to ping me on Twitter. I get it if you had a question today, tomorrow, like later today, or maybe even the day after. Feel free to ping me on Twitter on any question. But for now, I don't see that there are more questions in the chat, and I want to thank you for your attention. And I'm already 1 minute over time, so thank you. Enjoy DevDays Europe, and yeah, hope you all enjoy it. Let me get to the owners of this conference that I am done. Again, thank you so much. See you all later, and I will end the session in a second. Bye.